Hello, I'm Mary, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about something I love: how we can all use statistics to understand the world around us. I'm a statistician, and my job is to tell stories with numbers to help people make decisions. But you don't have to have a job that involves numbers to make decisions with numbers. We all do it all the time, whether we realize it or not. Think about your typical day. When you wake up, perhaps you have an alarm clock, or you look at the time. There are your first numbers of the day. Maybe then you work out how long you've got until you need to go to school. Do you think about whether you've got time to do everything you want before you have to go? When you're ready to leave, how will you get to school, and how do you decide? Do you check the weather forecast? Does that help you decide whether you're going to walk or get the bus? Or maybe whether you should take a coat or an umbrella? There is a lot of maths that is used to predict the weather. There might be other things that you think about to inform your decision. Maybe you check a route planner to see how long each option is going to take. Or maybe you think about the cost of different options. Hopefully you have a fun day at school, and then on your way home, maybe you go to the shops. When you're there, you'll have to think about how much money you have and what you can buy with it. And finally, once you get home, maybe you have pizza for tea. You'll need to think about how many pizzas you have and how many people you need to share it with. Were you hoping to share a pizza between two of you so that you get half each? Perhaps you've got some unexpected visitors, and now you've got to share that pizza between four of you, so you're going to get a quarter each. There are so many examples of using numbers to help you make decisions every day. Can you think of some more? So, I told you I'm a statistician, and I'm going to talk about statistics. Does everyone know what I mean when I say statistics? Many of you will have learned about statistics in your maths lessons, even if you haven't called it statistics. Statistics involves collecting and organising data, analysing data, and presenting data. By presenting this data in a helpful way, it can help people to understand it. As a statistician, I spend a lot of time working with data and numbers, and I'm going to tell you more about how to use and understand numbers. We'll look at the number of sweets in a packet, how understanding sweets has lessons for helping us understand more about people where we live. And at the end, I'm going to share some ways to help you be a good interpreter of numbers you hear from other people. I'm going to start by talking about sweets. Who likes sweets? So here, I've got a multi-pack of Skittles. I'm going to take 6 packets and find out more about them. Each individual packet looks very similar. Do you think there's anything we could do before we open the packets to try and understand if there are any differences? Have you had any ideas? Shall we try weighing them? Do you think they'll all be the same weight? I can see on the packet it says there are 18 18-gram bags. Do you think each packet's going to be 18 grams? Let's have a look. First packet says 20 grams. Second packet says 18 grams. Third packet, 19 grams, 18 grams, 20 grams, and 20 grams. What do you think that tells us? Will some packets have more sweets and some have fewer? Which packet would you choose? We don't know much about the colours inside yet, do we? Do you think we'll get many of our favourite colour? What do you think we should do next? Shall we open the packet? Now the packet is open, we can see a bit more about what's in each packet. We can see the colours, and maybe if you look carefully, we can see that some piles are a little bit bigger than others. We can make this information easier to understand by organising it in a different way. If we line up the sweets next to each other, it will be easier to see which packet has the most Skittles. Look, we can already see there were more Skittles in the first packet than the second. This is what we would expect, because the first packet was heavier than the second packet. Now we've got all the packets lined up. And there's one more thing we can do to make it even easier to read. We can make it into a bar chart. Let's add some axes, add some numbers, and make sure we label those axes so it's easy to understand. Very quickly, we can see how we went from piles of Skittles to a bar chart. We can see there were 17 Skittles in the first packet. The fifth packet had the most Skittles with 18. And packets that weighed 18 or 19 grams each had 16 Skittles in them. How would you feel if you got one of these packets? But maybe it's not just the number of Skittles you care about, but what colour you're going to get. Let's look again at the first packet. How many of each colour are in there? How could we look at this? How could we tell? We could count each colour and write down what we find. But I think we've just learned an easier way. What if we line up the colours next to each other? Now, we can very quickly see there are more reds than any other colour, and only one purple. Would you be happy with that packet? I think purple is my favourite flavour Skittle, so I would prefer a different packet. Each packet looks different, and I would like to know more about whether combining more packets means we get a similar number of each colour. What do you think will happen if we do the same thing but for the other 5 packets combined? Who thinks there will be more reds than any other colour? Did you see, as we were going through the packets, it looked like there might be most reds. But as we added more, till we got to all 5 packets combined, actually there were more greens, and red was the least common colour. What we've done with the sweets is a good example of how statisticians often try to measure things. You've just learnt about probability and sampling. Sometimes it will be too hard to count everything we want to know about. So we might take a smaller number of the thing we want to count, which we call a sample, and use this to try and understand more about the bigger group, which we call the population. For example, you might want to know the likelihood or probability of a packet of Skittles having more red sweets than any other colour. We could use our sample to try and predict what we expect to happen in other packets. We have to be careful though, because if the sample is too small, it will not be very good in terms of estimating the group we are trying to measure. We'd say it is not representative. Take the first packet we looked at. We might have felt confident that there would be more reds than any other colour if this was our sample. Using 5 packets gives us a better idea of what we're likely to see in the other packets of Skittles. If we looked at all the Skittles in the shop, it would be even better, but much more expensive, and it would take quite a long time. If we did look at all the packets in the shop, what do you think would happen? Do you think there would be more green Skittles? Or do you think that's just because of the sample we had? I think in the factory they try and make the same number of each colour, and I think the variation we see is just because of how each colour ends up in each packet. Alongside this talk are some activities you can try. There are 2 activities which help you think more about probability and sampling. For the first activity, all you need is a dice. For the second activity, you just need a pencil and a piece of paper, and you can try your own survey. We've talked about how we all use numbers to make decisions. We've also talked about how to organise data to help us understand it. Now, I want to talk about one of the things that's most important when we make big decisions. Understanding more about people. How would you try and estimate the number of people in your town or in the whole country? We could try and count every single person. We could take a sample and make estimates about the rest of the population based on this sample. Or we could try and see if somebody else has collected information for other purposes, which tells us what we need to know. As well as understanding how many people there are, we might want to know a bit more about them. Instead of the colours of sweets we looked at with Skittles, we might want to know more about the age of the people. Knowing about the people who live in an area, how many people there are, and something about them, helps with decisions on what should be in that area. Like where to build a school or a hospital, how many swimming pools or playgrounds we need, or what shops are near you. If you were thinking about opening a shop, how would you decide where to put it? Maybe you would think about the age of people who would use the shop and try and find somewhere with lots of people of that age, so you have lots of potential customers. Now I've got another activity for you. Why don't you take a look at data published by the Office for National Statistics and see if you can find out how many people there are of your age in your local area. You could pick a local area you don't know, or create your own fictional area and think about how the age of people in that area would change what you want in the area. Would you have the same shops as you have at home? Would you need fewer schools or more hospitals? Why don't you think about how you would go about making decisions once you know about the population? And finally, I want to talk about numbers we hear from others. A lot of the time, we are given numbers by other people. It could be friends. It could be something we hear or see in the media, or it could be from teachers. It's important to think about how good they are and whether they tell us what we want to know. If I told you that on average, every person in the United Kingdom eats 100 bananas a day, would you believe me? How did you decide whether you believe me or not? First, you could think about, am I someone you trust? The source of information is really important in deciding whether you believe it. You might trust different people telling you about different things. For example, you might trust a teacher or grown-up to be accurate when telling you what a new word means. But you might trust your friend more if it's telling you which Skittle is the best. Next, you might want to think about how accurate do you think the information is? Does it seem reasonable to you? Do you know how it was calculated? With the example of bananas, you might think about how many bananas the people you know eat each day. Do you know anyone who eats 100 bananas a day? Better still, you could try to find out how many bananas are sold in shops and divide this by the total number of people in the population. This would give you an estimate of the number of bananas eaten per day. Having done all that, you might have a number you think seems correct. But it's only of any use if it's telling you about the thing you wanted to know about. There is no point knowing how many bananas people eat each day if actually you want to know how much a banana costs so you can take the right money to the shop. So, a quick reminder, when you're faced with numbers, think about where the number came from. Do you trust the source? Think about, does the number seem accurate? Do you have any information you can use to see if it seems reasonable? Do you know how it was calculated? And finally, is it telling you about what you wanted to know about? I hope you have enjoyed this talk and learned something about statistics and numbers. I hope it will inspire you to go and look at numbers in a different way as you go about the rest of your day or your week. And in case you're wondering, it is not true that the average number of bananas eaten per person is 100. I just added that for fun. Thank you very much for listening.